Hey guys, it's Amber from Notable Ink. Today I'm featuring 3 die sets from Altenew's new standalone die release, and I'm using the Leaf Mix die set and the Autumn Festival watercolors to create these encouragement cards. Here is the brand new Leaf Mix die set. There are 14 leaf elements in this set, and you can mix and match them because most of them have the same basic shape outline. So you can cut multiple sheets of this and layer them as you wish. I went ahead and cut all of the images once in a scrap of the Altenew 9x12 watercolor paper that I had. And I'm just gonna spritz that with water. I have some post-it tape on the back to just keep the dies in place while I'm coloring them. Of course, the Autumn Festival watercolor brush marker set is perfect for autumn leaves. And what I have down on my mat is mango smoothie, yellow ochre, sea forest, tree bark, and winter fog. I also have a little bit of ultramarine up in the upper right hand corner. I don't end up using that too much. So I have a number 12 round brush here, and I'm alternating picking up pigment from the glass mat that's a little more diluted with the water on my brush, and then also bringing the brush marker directly to the paper for some higher pigmentation. Although I don't use autumn colors very frequently, these watercolor brush markers, the way that they've curated these colors to go together, they're really easy to use. They just kind of go together. The winter fog and the tree bark have a purple hue to them, but even when you mix them with the yellow and the yellow ochre, it's still a really pretty color. I don't think that it gets muddy or turns into an unpleasing color. They mix together really well. So I appreciate how easy these are to use. So I will set those aside to dry, and then what I wanted to do, I had this ink on my mat and I have a piece of translucent wood grain paper here, and it's almost like a wood grain vellum, if you will, and I decided I would try and ink smush it, not really thinking that vellum is pretty much not an absorbent paper. I don't know why I didn't think about that. I think I was just thinking of like the wood grain paper and thinking it would have the same effect. It didn't, but I was already doing it. So I continued to kind of smush this on, and then I went ahead and painted some on. It did end up taking some of the color, and then it was kind of just sitting on top of the surface rather than absorbing it. So I just blotted it off. It did leave some of the watercolor stain on there. And after it was painted, it had the coolest feel to the paper. It almost felt like a really soft hide. I don't know. I couldn't stop touching it, you guys, like you can see there. I decided I wanted to die cut this with the Burlap texture die, but I wanted it to have a little bit of weight to it. So I went ahead and adhered it to a piece of white cardstock and then ran that through the Gemini Junior. So here you can see the finished piece there. So I mean, if you don't have that translucent paper, then I would just use wood grain paper if you have that, because I ended up backing it with cardstock anyway. So you can get the same effect that way. After the leaf pieces dried, the color dried back, so I decided to ink smush them in some leftover ink, and then I also splattered some additional ink on them. And I also die cut 5 extra solid leaves and watercolored them much darker. And so I have another piece of white cardstock. I've just ink smushed it in what was left over on my mat to create a background. And I have to be honest, I liked that background so much I almost didn't want to cover it up with anything at all. So I'm just going to glue some pieces together to create some final elements. And then here I have the brand new Featured Sentiments die set. So here I just took the dies to a piece of champagne colored metallic cardstock, and I'm just going through my sentiments from different stamp sets and finding ones that will fit in there. And what I found is that you don't have to limit yourself just to the sentiment strips stamp sets. You can definitely fit other sentiments in there. So here I'm using Jennifer McGuire's trick with the press and seal. You guys, I am rubbish at this. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it makes it easier for me. Now, it took me forever to come up with an arrangement, which is why I'm using this technique to try and keep everything together. But I do struggle with it a bit. I end up having the press and seal stick too firmly to some areas and not enough to other areas. But basically, I'm just going to glue a couple pieces down, then pick it back up, and then I'll add some glue to the burlap texture die here, that little leaf cluster. And then I do end up using a couple of foam squares underneath the uppermost leaves to add just a bit more dimension to some of the layers. So some of the layers are adhered directly to the card panel, others are popped up. And then once I got to the sentiments, I just eyeballed where I wanted those to go. So here you can see I have just 2 sentiments on it, and in the photo you'll see that I added a third. In the close-up you can see how much texture is in this project. So moving on to the second card, I kept things really simple. There were a couple of these little outlines from the solid pieces that I thought came together really nicely as almost like a lotus flower type look. And I thought that would be really nice for a very clean and simple sympathy card. Now here you can see that me playing around with it. I love how spread out this arrangement is compared to the final arrangement, which is more narrow. I stamped the sentiment on rose gold metallic paper and popped it up on some foam tape. Using the rest of the leftover leaves, I made an arrangement with that. I'm going to use 3 different metallic cardstocks that coordinate with the colors. So I have that same champagne color, I added eucalyptus, and then also chestnut. And I'll have all of the cardstocks and all of the supplies listed down below in case you guys are interested in those. This again took me a while to arrange, so I'll do the press and seal technique again, but this time I think I just adhered everything just straight down on itself. I didn't pop anything up on foam squares. For the sentiment, I am just going to stamp it directly onto the champagne metallic cardstock with a block. And for all of the sentiments, I stamped them in obsidian pigment ink, and that worked beautifully on these metallic papers. Here are the finished cards, and I love that I was able to create 3 cards. Obviously, I put a lot of leaves on the 2 cards, so you could spread that out even further and create more cards. And of course, you can get a completely different look just by switching up your color scheme. So lots of options. Be sure to join us on the hop for a lot more inspiration with the standalone dies. I'll have that link down below. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and ringing that bell so you don't miss any new inspiration. Here's a couple more videos for you before you leave, and I'll see you real soon.